The queen of the Vaelara had never been wrong about a species, until the day she met a human. The plasma storm rolled across the horizon like a living wall of light, violet arcs snapping between jagged crystal spires that rose from the frozen plains of Vaelara Prime. Wind screamed at nearly 80 miles per hour, carrying razor-fine ice that pinged against the hull of the damaged survey pod half buried in the snow. Lucas Hale braced his boots against the trembling deck, gloved hands flying over a sparking console as warning lights strobed red across his visor. "Come on, hold together," he muttered, breath fogging inside his helmet despite the thermal regulators fighting the minus 60-degree air outside. The pod had not been built for a Vaelara ion storm. Nothing built by humans was. Another surge hit, and the engine core gave a protesting whine before settling into a fragile hum. Lucas exhaled slowly. He had come to this sector as a civilian biosystems engineer, contracted to study extremophile ecosystems. He had not come to trespass into the sovereign territory of an empire that measured its lineage in thousands of years. The external sensors flickered back online just long enough to register silhouettes moving through the storm. Tall figures, easily 8 feet high, advancing with impossible steadiness against the gale. Their armor shimmered like liquid sapphire under the lightning flashes, surfaces smooth and organic, as if grown rather than forged. Lucas felt the vibration before he heard it, a low harmonic resonance that made the ice at his feet tremble. Then the storm parted, not weakened, but disciplined, as a vessel descended from the clouds without a sound. It was not shaped like any ship he knew. It curved like a crescent blade, its surface reflecting the lightning and ripples of deep blue and silver. A beam of pale light scanned the wreckage of his pod. Systems inside his cockpit went dark one by one, silenced without force. The hatch unsealed with a soft hiss. The cold hit him first, sharp and absolute. Then he saw her. She stood at the edge of the drifting snow, taller than the armored guards beside her, her posture perfectly straight despite the wind clawing at the world around them. Her skin was a deep cerulean blue, almost metallic where the lightning traced across it, and faint luminous patterns moved beneath the surface like slow constellations. Silver-white hair streamed behind her in controlled defiance of the storm. Her eyes, golden, steady, assessing, fixed on him as if he were not a man but a hypothesis. Lucas forced himself upright, disengaging his helmet. The air burned his lungs. "I'm guessing this isn't a welcoming committee," he said, voice tight but steady. One of the armored figures stepped forward, but the tall woman lifted a single hand. The gesture was minimal, absolute. The guard froze. She approached instead, closing the distance in long, measured strides. Up close, she was even more imposing, easily 8 feet tall, presence compressing the air between them. The storm bent around her, as if unwilling to touch her directly. When she spoke, her voice was low and resonant, carrying through the wind without effort. "You stand on sovereign ground, human." Her gaze swept over the damaged pod, then back to his face. Not anger, not curiosity, calculation. "State your purpose before this becomes a brief encounter." Lucas swallowed, frost forming along the edge of his collar. "Lucas Hale, civilian engineer. My navigation systems failed during the storm. I didn't exactly plan to land here." A flicker of something crossed her features, amusement, faint and cool. "Your species rarely plans its intrusions." Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating her fully. Regal armor flowed over her frame in layered segments of blue-black alloy that seemed to shift with her breathing. No insignia marked her rank. She did not need one. Even without introduction, Lucas understood. This was authority distilled. "You will come with us," she said. It was not a threat. It was a correction of circumstance. Lucas glanced once at his ruined pod, then back at the towering figure before him. "I'm guessing that wasn't a request." The faintest curve touched her lips, not warmth, but interest. "No, human." It was not. The transport vessel rose without a tremor, the frozen plane shrinking beneath Lucas as if erased by distance rather than altitude. He stood inside a chamber of seamless blue alloy, wrists unbound, yet unmistakably contained by the subtle hum of an energy field that shimmered along the curved walls. The temperature adjusted within seconds, warming from the brutal minus 60 degrees outside to a controlled 72, precise and clinical. Across from him, the towering guards remained motionless, their luminous visors reflecting his smaller frame back at him in distorted fragments. He calculated the ceiling height at nearly 12 feet, built for a species that did not need to bow. When the craft pierced the upper cloud layer, Vaelara Prime revealed itself in stark grandeur. Vast continents of silver ice broken by deep cobalt seas that glowed faintly under electrical storms dancing across the atmosphere. Lucas had studied alien biospheres for years, but this was something else entirely. This was engineered resilience. The vessel descended again, this time toward a structure that rose from the ice like a living cathedral, its spires curved and organic, shimmering with internal light. No visible thrusters. No smoke. Only gravity bending quietly to design. The landing platform unfolded in layered arcs as the craft settled. The doors opened with a soft harmonic tone that resonated in his chest. She was waiting. The storm did not touch the palace grounds. A translucent barrier arched overhead, refracting lightning into pale ribbons of harmless light. The tall figure stepped forward, cerulean skin catching the glow as though lit from within. Her golden eyes remained steady on him, not hostile, not welcoming, evaluating. "You adapt quickly," she observed, her voice carrying through the chamber without strain. Lucas resisted the urge to rub warmth back into his hands. When the alternative is freezing solid, adaptation becomes a hobby. A faint pause followed. Not confusion. Processing. Human humor, she said quietly. An evolutionary coping mechanism. She turned, and the guards parted instantly. "You will walk beside me." The interior of the palace felt less constructed and more cultivated, as if grown from crystalline veins that pulsed softly with energy. The air carried a subtle metallic scent mixed with something mineral and clean. Light flowed along the walls in shifting patterns that resembled constellations. Lucas noted the absence of weapons displayed, the absence of overt intimidation. Authority here did not require spectacle. As they moved through the corridor, towering figures paused and inclined their heads toward her. Not deeply, not submissively. Respect born from lineage. He kept his stride measured, refusing to hurry, refusing to lag. "You have not asked my name," he said after several silent seconds. She slowed just enough for the difference to register. Names are granted meaning by relevance. Her gaze flicked toward him briefly. "You have not yet demonstrated yours." Lucas met her eyes without challenge. "Lucas Hale, civilian engineer. I fix systems that break under pressure." That drew the smallest shift in her expression. Almost imperceptible. "Everything breaks under pressure, Lucas Hale." They reached a vast circular chamber where the floor seemed suspended over a deep well of light. At its center stood a crystalline column emitting a steady hum, layered holographic symbols orbiting it like satellites. The energy signature tingled against his skin. "Biological. Complex. You entered restricted territory during a reproductive cycle calibration," she said evenly. "Your species has been under observation." Lucas felt the weight of the word settle. Observation usually means curiosity. She faced him fully now, towering, luminous patterns beneath her skin faintly pulsing in slow rhythm. Curiosity does not imply compatibility. The chamber brightened slightly as the column responded to her presence. "You will undergo genomic assessment." Lucas exhaled slowly, steadying himself against the hum in the air. "And if I am not compatible?" Her golden eyes held his without blinking. "Then this intrusion becomes an anomaly." The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm outside, charged not with hostility, but with the quiet tension of a species that did not make mistakes. Lucas straightened his shoulders beneath the alien light. "Then let us find out." The crystalline column brightened as Lucas stepped onto the circular platform, the floor beneath him warming slightly, as if responding to his body heat. Thin bands of pale light rose from the base and formed a transparent lattice around him, not touching, yet close enough that he could feel a faint static prickle across his skin. The air carried a low harmonic tone, steady and measured, like a heartbeat amplified through metal. Across the chamber, Empress Vaelara stood motionless, hands clasped behind her back, cerulean skin illuminated by the shifting constellations embedded in the walls. The luminous patterns beneath her skin pulsed once, then settled into a controlled rhythm. "Remain still," she said. It was not a warning. It was calibration. Lucas nodded once, planting his boots shoulder-width apart. "You are about to scan me down to the molecule," he said evenly. "I hope your system is ready for human chaos." A faint ripple moved through the light bands around him. Vaelzira's golden eyes narrowed just slightly. "Your species refers to unpredictability as chaos," she replied. "We refer to it as inefficiency." The lattice contracted, beams narrowing until they traced the outline of his frame, mapping bone density, muscle fiber, neural conductivity. Symbols flared above the column in layered spirals. Of blue and white. Lucas watched the data scroll in midair, recognizing patterns of genomic sequencing even if the language was alien. "Your atmospheric regulators compensated for my core temperature in under 3 seconds, he observed. "That is not inefficiency." For the first time, she stepped closer to the edge of the platform. The difference in their height was striking. She looked down at him, not with disdain, but with focused intensity. Vaelara systems adapt only to variables that justify adaptation. The light intensified, scanning deeper. Lucas felt warmth bloom along his spine, then across his chest, as if invisible threads were brushing against his DNA. The harmonic tone shifted pitch, climbing higher. Symbols above the column flickered, then rearranged in a pattern that caused several observing figures at the chamber's perimeter to straighten visibly. Vaelzira noticed it immediately. "Explain," she commanded without turning. One of the attendants, tall and silver-armored, inclined his head. "Genomic resonance detected, your radiance. The human sequence is interfacing." Lucas frowned. "Interfacing is usually a good sign where I come from." The attendant hesitated, as though choosing words with extreme precision. "It is not supposed to occur." The lattice brightened again, not aggressively, but with a curious intensity. The warmth in Lucas's chest spread outward, synchronizing with the harmonic tone until he could no longer distinguish between the machine's pulse and his own heartbeat. Vaelzira's luminous markings responded in kind, faint lines of light tracing along her arms and collarbone in a slow, involuntary rhythm. Her posture stiffened. "Terminate the scan," she ordered quietly. The column dimmed at once. The lattice dissolved into drifting motes that faded into the air. Silence settled over the chamber, thick and electric. Lucas exhaled, unaware he had been holding his breath. "Well," he said carefully, "that looked more interesting than inefficient." Vaelzira's gaze remained fixed on the suspended symbols still flickering above the column. The data stabilized into a single rotating strand where human and Vaelara sequences intertwined in luminous overlap. Not merged, not corrupted, aligned. A subtle shift crossed her expression, something far more complex than amusement. "Your species was catalogued as biologically incompatible," she said slowly. "And yet the resonance index exceeds baseline Vaelara pairings." Lucas tilted his head, processing. "You said this was a reproductive cycle calibration." The words lingered between them. Around the chamber, attendants exchanged silent glances. Vaelzira finally looked back at him. Golden eyes no longer merely analytical. They held something sharper. "You arrived during a sacred interval," she said. "And your genome has responded as though summoned." Lucas gave a short, disbelieving breath of laughter. "Trust me, your radiance." I was not invited. For a fraction of a second, the luminous patterns beneath her skin flared brighter, then dimmed. The chamber lights adjusted automatically, compensating for a subtle but measurable spike in her internal bioenergy. The column emitted a final, soft chime, locking the results into crystalline memory. Vaelzira straightened to her full height. "The anomaly is no longer yours alone, Lucas Hale," she said, voice lower now, steadier, carrying an undercurrent of something newly awakened. "It is mine." The chamber did not empty after the scan ended. It tightened, not physically, but politically. The attendants remained at the perimeter, their tall silhouettes rigid beneath silver armor that reflected the dimmed glow of the central column. Above the crystalline core, the intertwined genomic strand continued its slow rotation, projecting pale blue light across the Empress's cerulean skin. Lucas could feel the shift in the room the way a mechanic feels a change in engine vibration before a gauge ever moves. Something fundamental had recalibrated. Vaelzira stepped down from the raised platform, each movement measured, controlled. The luminous markings beneath her skin had settled, but not completely. A faint pulse remained at her throat, synchronized with the residual hum of the column. "Seal this chamber," she said without raising her voice. The doors closed with a smooth, resonant glide. The outside corridors vanished behind seamless alloy. Privacy, Lucas realized, was not common here. It was chosen. The attendants hesitated only a fraction of a second before withdrawing to the outer ring of the chamber, far enough to grant space, yet close enough to witness history if required. Vaelara approached him directly now, no barrier of light between them, no lattice mapping his cells. At 8 feet tall, she cast a long shadow over him despite the even illumination. "Explain your biological architecture," she said. It was not accusation. It was demand for clarity. Lucas folded his arms loosely, resisting the instinct to appear defensive. "Human DNA is adaptive. We evolved on a planet with shifting climates, unstable ecosystems, constant microbial pressure. Compatibility is not about design. It is about resilience." Her golden eyes searched his face as though the answer might be written in muscle tension or breath rate. "Vaelara reproduction follows precise cycles," she replied. "It is governed by harmonic synchronization between paired genomes. Deviation is historically non-viable." Lucas glanced toward the hovering strand of data. That did not look non-viable. A flicker crossed her expression again, less restrained this time. Not anger. Disruption. "The resonance index surpassed that of bonded Vaelara consorts," she said quietly. "Such alignment without ritual pairing is statistically negligible." "Statistically negligible is not the same as impossible," Lucas answered. The air between them seemed warmer now, though the chamber climate remained constant at 72 degrees. The crystalline column emitted a soft recalibration tone, locking the data deeper into storage. Vaelara turned her head slightly toward the projection, and the luminous patterns beneath her skin brightened in subtle response. Lucas noticed it immediately. "You are still reacting," he said. She did not deny it. "The calibration window remains active," she admitted. "Your presence sustains the harmonic field." That landed heavier than the scan results. Lucas lowered his voice instinctively, though no one else could overhear clearly at this distance. "Are you saying this is temporary?" Her gaze snapped back to his. "I am saying it is unprecedented." Silence stretched. Outside the translucent barrier beyond the palace walls, lightning flashed in silent arcs across the frozen horizon. Within the chamber, the harmonic hum softened but did not fade. One of the attendants stepped forward cautiously. "Your Radiance, the council must be informed." Vaelara did not look away from Lucas. "The council will be informed when I determine the nature of this anomaly." The attendant bowed his head and retreated. Lucas exhaled slowly. "Back home, when something does not fit the model, we revise the model." A faint, almost imperceptible curve touched the corner of her mouth. "Your species revises quickly. We have to. The universe does not slow down for us." Her luminous markings pulsed once more, brighter than before, then steadied. "Nor does it slow for us, Lucas Hale." She stepped even closer now, close enough that he could see the intricate lattice of light beneath her skin, like galaxies mapped beneath translucent sapphire. "You will remain within the palace grounds," she said, "until this harmonic interval concludes." Lucas met her gaze without flinching. "Am I a guest or a variable?" For a moment, the faintest glimmer of something unguarded passed through her golden eyes. "At present," she said softly, "you are both." Lucas was escorted to a private wing of the palace that felt less like a cell and more like a controlled experiment. The corridor walls curved in seamless arcs of deep blue alloy, faint threads of light pulsing beneath the surface in slow, synchronized patterns. Every 50 feet, translucent panels opened to reveal the frozen expanse outside, lightning crawling across the horizon like distant veins of fire trapped beneath ice. The temperature inside remained steady at 72 degrees, but he could feel a subtle vibration in the floor beneath his boots, a harmonic echo of the reproductive calibration interval still active somewhere deep within the structure. He paused near one of the viewing panels, hands resting loosely at his sides, watching the storm coil around the palace barrier. He had faced unstable reactors and collapsing ecosystems before, but this was different. This was biological uncertainty on an imperial scale. A soft chime announced her presence before he saw her reflection in the glass. Vaelara entered without guards this time. Her armor had been replaced by a flowing mantle of dark cobalt fabric that moved like liquid around her tall frame. The luminous constellations beneath her skin were more visible now in the softer lighting, faint lines tracing along her arms and collarbone in measured rhythm. "You are observing our atmosphere," she said. "Engineers prefer to understand their surroundings," Lucas replied without turning. "If I am going to remain here, I should know what tries to freeze me at minus 60 degrees. A subtle shift in her posture suggested restrained amusement. "The storms are seasonal, predictable within margin." He faced her fully. The scan results were not. The words lingered between them. She stepped closer to the viewing panel, towering beside him, her reflection nearly overlapping his in the curved surface. For a moment, they both studied the storm rather than each other. "The Council has requested immediate review of the resonance data," she said at last. "They believe your presence may destabilize Vaelara succession protocols." Lucas raised an eyebrow. Succession protocols usually involve heirs. Silence followed. The faint pulse beneath her skin intensified for a single beat before settling again. "Vaelara rulers reproduce only within sanctioned harmonic pairings," she explained evenly. "It preserves lineage integrity." Lucas considered that carefully. "And if the harmonic field forms outside those sanctions?" Her golden eyes shifted. Toward him. Not cold now. Focused. "Then the implications extend beyond lineage." The harmonic vibration beneath the floor strengthened subtly, like a distant engine increasing output. Lucas felt it in his chest again, that same synchronized warmth from the scan chamber. He exhaled slowly. "You are still within the interval," he said quietly. She did not deny it. Instead, she placed one long, cerulean hand lightly against the viewing panel. The glass responded, displaying faint biometric overlays only visible from her angle. Lucas caught a glimpse of fluctuating energy curves before they faded. "The calibration window narrows with each passing hour," she said. "Normally, it concludes without event. But it has not concluded," Lucas finished. A pause. The storm outside flared bright violet, lightning illuminating her profile in sharp, regal lines. "No," she said. "It has not." He studied her expression carefully. "You called this an anomaly. That is a scientific term. It is also a political one," she replied. For the first time, her voice carried something beyond authority. Not fear. Awareness. "If the resonance stabilizes, the Council will demand containment." Lucas let out a quiet breath. Containment of me, or containment of what the scan suggested? Her gaze locked onto his, luminous markings beneath her skin brightening in slow response. "Both," she answered softly. The harmonic vibration intensified again, subtle yet undeniable, as though the palace itself were recalibrating around them. Outside, the storm pressed against the barrier in silent arcs of energy. Inside, something equally powerful was aligning, not through force, not through ritual, but through proximity. Vaelara lowered her hand from the glass. "You will dine with me tonight," she said, tone returning to imperial calm. "The Council will observe from distance." Lucas held her gaze without flinching. "As a guest," he asked quietly, "or as evidence?" The faintest curve touched her lips, no longer dismissive. "Tonight, Lucas Hale," she said, "you are neither. You are a question the Empire has not yet learned how to answer." The dining chamber overlooked the frozen sea, its curved walls transparent from floor to ceiling, revealing lightning flickering across distant ice fields like silent fireworks. A long table of dark crystalline material stood at the center, its surface smooth and reflective, illuminated from beneath by a soft blue glow. No guard stood within the room, yet Lucas could sense observation woven into the architecture itself. Subtle lenses embedded high. In the vaulted ceiling shimmered faintly, transmitting every gesture to the unseen council. Vaelara entered from the far archway, her mantle replaced with a formal robe of deep midnight blue threaded with thin lines of silver that mirrored the luminous constellations beneath her skin. The fabric moved without sound as she approached, 8 feet of poised authority crossing the chamber with unhurried grace. Lucas rose from his place instinctively. "I assume the menu is less hazardous than the atmosphere outside," he said lightly. A faint flicker of warmth touched her golden eyes. "Vaelara cuisine does not require endurance training," she replied. The table responded to her presence, generating shallow crystalline dishes that filled with translucent fruits and mineral infusions glowing faintly in shades of teal and violet. Lucas examined the offerings with measured curiosity. No meat, he observed. We derive energy primarily from mineralized proteins, she explained, taking her seat at the opposite end. Predation is inefficient at our stage of evolution. He nodded slowly. Humans still argue about that. As they began to eat, the harmonic vibration beneath the floor intensified almost imperceptibly, a low resonance threading through the chamber like distant thunder. Lucas felt the warmth return to his chest, steady and synchronized, not uncomfortable, but undeniable. Vaelara luminous markings responded in kind, faint pulses tracing along her throat and wrists. She paused, fingers hovering above her dish for a fraction of a second before resuming. The interval narrows, she said quietly. The council has confirmed the resonance persists. Lucas leaned back slightly, studying her expression rather than the food. And what does persistence mean in Vaelara terms? Her gaze lifted to meet his across the glowing table. It means the harmonic field has moved beyond preliminary alignment. Silence settled between them, thick but not hostile. Outside, lightning flared brighter against the palace barrier, illuminating the sea in sharp lines of silver light. Lucas folded his hands loosely in front of him. Back home, when two biological systems synchronize beyond baseline, it usually indicates the beginning of a process. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You speak as though you understand Vaelara reproduction. I understand patterns, he replied evenly. And I understand when data refuses to retreat. The harmonic tone deepened subtly, causing the table's glow to fluctuate for a brief second before stabilizing. Vaelara placed her hand flat against the crystalline surface. The table responded, projecting a faint biometric readout visible only from her angle. Lucas caught a glimpse of rising energy curves and stabilized genomic pairing metrics before the projection dimmed. Her luminous markings flared once, brighter than before, then softened. The resonance has crossed threshold, she said at last, her voice steady but lower than before. Crossed threshold, Lucas repeated carefully. Meaning what? She held his gaze without blinking. For the first time since his arrival, the certainty that defined her posture seemed to shift, not into weakness, but into something heavier. Consequence. Meaning the harmonic field has initiated gestational protocol, she said. The words did not echo. They settled. The storm outside cracked with a silent burst of light that illuminated her cerulean form in stark clarity. Lucas felt his pulse slow rather than spike, engineer's instinct overriding panic. You are saying the process has begun, he said evenly. She inclined her head once. Yes. The harmonic vibration beneath the floor stabilized into a steady, unwavering tone. Not chaotic, not unstable, defined. Vaelara's luminous markings glowed softly beneath her skin, no longer erratic, but aligned. She rose from her seat with deliberate calm, towering and composed despite the magnitude of the declaration. The council will interpret this as disruption, she said. Lucas stood as well, meeting her height difference with steady posture rather than submission. And how do you interpret it? For a brief, unguarded moment, her golden eyes reflected not lightning, not data, but something far more personal. As inevitability, she answered. The council chamber was carved from the same living crystal as the palace, but it felt colder, not in temperature, but in intention. Tiered platforms rose in concentric arcs around a central dais where Vaelara now stood in full regalia, midnight robes flowing behind her like a controlled tide. Above, a domed ceiling revealed the storm-swept sky, lightning flashing in silent veins across the frozen horizon. Lucas remained several paces behind her, positioned neither at her side nor among the observers, suspended in a deliberate ambiguity that every member of the council clearly registered. 12 Vaelara elders occupied the elevated platforms, each towering, each marked by luminous patterns that pulsed in restrained discipline. The harmonic vibration beneath the floor was no longer subtle. It resonated steadily through the chamber, a constant reminder that biology had already advanced beyond debate. You have reviewed the data, Vaelara said, her voice carrying without amplification. It did not need to be raised. Authority here was gravitational. One elder stepped forward, silver markings tracing across deep azure skin. The resonance exceeds sanctioned parameters. The gestational protocol has activated outside approved lineage pairing. His gaze shifted briefly toward Lucas, then returned to the Empress. This threatens continuity. Lucas felt the weight of that word settle into the chamber. Continuity. Legacy. Control. Vaelara did not turn to acknowledge him. Continuity evolves, she replied evenly. The data indicates stability. Another elder's markings flared brighter. Stability does not equal legitimacy. The harmonic tone deepened in response to the rising tension, not chaotic, but reactive. Lucas recognized the pattern. The palace itself was synchronizing with her physiology. Your radiance, a third elder said carefully. Containment remains an option. The word was spoken without cruelty, without aggression. It was procedural. Lucas straightened slightly, not in defiance, but in clarity. He did not reach for a weapon he did not have. He did not raise his voice. If you intend to contain something, he said calmly, addressing the chamber rather than a single figure, you should first confirm whether it is unstable. Several sets of golden eyes shifted toward him, surprised by his composure more than his interruption. Vaelara remained still for a long moment, then stepped down from the dais. The movement was deliberate, symbolic. She descended the central steps and stopped halfway between the council and Lucas, luminous markings beneath her skin glowing with steady intensity. The harmonic field is not unstable, she said. It is integrated. The word echoed differently than the others. Integrated implied acceptance rather than error. An elder's voice cut through the chamber. Integrated with a human. Vaelara's gaze hardened slightly. Integrated with resilience. The harmonic vibration strengthened again, and for the first time the crystalline floor beneath Lucas's boots responded directly. Faint lines of light tracing outward from where he stood, converging toward her position. The chamber lights adjusted automatically, compensating for a measurable increase in bioenergetic output. Lucas felt the warmth in his chest expand, not uncontrolled, but aligned, matching the rhythm pulsing beneath her skin. The elders saw it. Silence replaced argument. The process has advanced beyond preliminary resonance, Vaelara continued. Termination would destabilize imperial bioharmonics. The statement was clinical, strategic, not emotional. Yet beneath the composure, something else held firm. Choice. The elder who first spoke inclined his head slightly. You would anchor succession to an anomaly. Vaelara lifted her chin, 8 feet of sovereign certainty illuminated by lightning from above. I would anchor succession to evolution. The storm outside flared brilliant white for a split second, casting her cerulean form in stark relief against the chamber's crystalline architecture. Lucas did not move. He did not kneel. He simply met her gaze when she turned toward him at last. In that silent exchange, the harmonic tone stabilized fully, no longer fluctuating under scrutiny. Not fragile. Defined. The council chamber remained motionless, but the axis of power had shifted, not through force, not through decree, but through alignment neither empire had predicted. Vaelara faced the elders once more, voice steady as steel beneath silk. The protocol will proceed, she declared, and the empire will adapt. The council chamber did not erupt in protest after her declaration. It recalibrated. The elders withdrew into measured silence, luminous markings dimming to controlled pulses as if internal algorithms were rewriting doctrine in real time. The harmonic tone beneath the crystalline floor no longer wavered. It had chosen a frequency and committed to it. Vaelara remained at the center of the chamber, 8 feet of poised certainty beneath the stormlit dome, while lightning traced pale veins across the sky above. Lucas stood several steps behind her, not summoned forward, not dismissed. Observed. The senior elder inclined his head, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement of irreversible data. If the protocol proceeds, he said carefully, the empire must prepare for external scrutiny. The human species will not remain unaware. Lucas felt the weight of those words shift the conversation beyond biology. Politics. Diplomacy. Consequence measured in star systems rather than heartbeats. Vaelara turned slightly, just enough that Lucas could see the luminous constellations beneath her skin glow in steady alignment. The human will be informed, she said. It was not framed as a concession. It was strategy. The elder's gaze shifted to Lucas openly now. You would reveal imperial succession to an emerging species. Lucas met the stare without flinching. You already did, he said evenly. The moment your systems initiated protocol. A faint murmur passed through the chamber, not outrage, but recognition of logic. Vaelara stepped fully down from the dais this time, closing the remaining distance between herself and Lucas. The movement was deliberate, visible to every observer. When she stopped at his side, the harmonic vibration strengthened subtly, not chaotic, but reinforced, like two signals locking into phase. The elders saw it again. The palace itself confirmed alignment. Vaelara's succession is not weakened by evolution, she said, her voice calm, but carrying a sharpened edge of resolve. It is secured by it. The senior elders studied the two of them in silence, luminous markings reflecting the chamber's crystalline light. Finally, he lowered his head a fraction deeper than before. Then the council will adapt, he said. The words echoed differently than they had hours ago. Adaptation, once reserved for controlled variables, now acknowledged unpredictability as strength. The harmonic tone stabilized into a smooth, unwavering resonance that filled the chamber like a quiet anthem. Outside, the storm began to shift. The lightning strikes grew farther apart, the violent arcs softening into distant flickers across the horizon. Through the transparent dome, the frozen sea reflected pale blue light, instead of harsh violet flashes. Lucas exhaled slowly, feeling the warmth in his chest settle into something steady rather than reactive. Vaelara did not look at him immediately. She addressed the chamber once more. Prepare diplomatic channels, she commanded. The human alliance will not learn of this through rumor. Several elders inclined their heads in unison. Orders moved silently through the crystalline network of the palace, transmitted not through raised voices, but through harmonic code. When the chamber finally began to empty, Vaelara remained where she stood. Only when the last elder withdrew did she turn toward Lucas fully. Up close, the luminous patterns beneath her cerulean skin were no longer erratic. They traced deliberate paths of light, slow and synchronized. Your species adapts through necessity, she said quietly. Ours adapts through precision. Lucas allowed himself a small, controlled smile. Seems like we just tested both. For a brief moment, the distance between ruler and outsider dissolved into something simpler. Shared consequence. Shared future. Outside the dome, the storm clouds thinned, revealing faint stars beyond the atmosphere. The harmonic tone beneath their feet softened into background resonance, no longer announcing itself as anomaly. It had become foundation. Vaelara lifted her gaze to the clearing sky, golden eyes reflecting starlight instead of lightning. The Empire will remember this interval, she said. Lucas followed her gaze upward. So will humanity. And in the quiet that followed, neither sounded uncertain. The storm did not return. By morning, Vaelara Prime lay beneath a pale silver sky, the frozen sea calm and unbroken, reflecting distant stars that lingered long after sunrise. Inside the highest observatory of the palace, Lucas stood beside a curved viewport nearly 30 feet tall, watching the first rays of light stretch across the ice fields. The harmonic vibration that had once dominated every chamber had softened into a steady undercurrent, no longer urgent, no longer reactive. It felt less like an alarm and more like a foundation settling into place. Behind him, the soft sound of measured footsteps announced her presence without ceremony. Vaelara entered dressed not in imperial regalia, but in a simpler mantle of deep cobalt, the fabric falling in clean lines along her tall frame. The luminous constellations beneath her cerulean skin glowed faintly, not flaring, not unstable. Aligned. She stopped at his side, close enough that he could sense the quiet synchronization between them without looking. Outside, the horizon stretched for miles of frozen expanse, undisturbed and vast. The diplomatic channels are open, she said, voice calm, resonant, unshaken. Your world leaders have received the initial communique. Lucas nodded slowly. And they did not assume invasion? A faint glimmer touched her golden eyes. They assumed inquiry. He allowed himself a small breath of relief. That is progress. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, not uncertain. The observatory lights adjusted automatically as the sun crested higher, casting pale blue reflections across the chamber. For the first time since his arrival, Lucas noticed that the palace no longer felt like a containment structure. It felt like infrastructure preparing for expansion. Vaelara stepped closer to the viewport, one cerulean hand resting lightly against the transparent alloy. The glass responded to her touch with a faint shimmer, projecting a subtle bioharmonic readout visible only from her angle. Lucas did not need to see the data to understand its significance. The process was stable. The resonance had not faltered overnight. The council has accepted the inevitability, she said quietly. They now debate legacy rather than prevention. Lucas folded his arms loosely, gaze fixed on the endless ice. Legacy is just another word for future. Her luminous markings pulsed once in agreement, a soft glow tracing along her collarbone before settling again. Vaelara history records anomalies as disruptions, she said. This will be recorded as convergence. Lucas turned slightly toward her. On Earth, we call that evolution. For a brief moment, the weight of empire, protocol, and expectation seemed to lift, replaced by something simpler and far more profound. Choice had been made. Not by accident. Not by force. By recognition. Vaelara lifted her gaze to the thinning clouds, where faint stars still shimmered against daylight. I once believed your species to be impulsive, she admitted. Unrefined. Lucas smiled faintly. We get that a lot. She regarded him fully now, golden eyes reflecting both starlight and morning sun. Yet it was your resilience that synchronized with our precision, she said. Not through conquest. Not through demand. Through presence. The harmonic undercurrent beneath the palace stabilized further, blending seamlessly into the architecture itself. No alarms. No fluctuations. Just continuity shaped by something neither side had anticipated. Lucas stepped closer to the viewport, standing beside her without hesitation, without bowing. Their reflections merged faintly in the curved glass, cerulean and human, different in scale, yet aligned in posture. Outside, the frozen sea glowed beneath the rising sun, untouched and immense. In a universe that measures strength by dominance, Vaelara said softly, almost to herself, this will be remembered as restraint. Lucas looked at the horizon stretching beyond sight, miles of possibility under open sky. On my world, he replied quietly, we call that being human. And as the stars faded fully into daylight, the empire did not fracture. It expanded, not through fear, not through superiority, but through the quiet acknowledgement that evolution had chosen partnership over pride.